I love my mommy because she reads me stories. She listens when I talk. She feeds me when I'm hungry. She keeps me nice and clean. She takes me for a ride. I love my mommy because she swims with me. She gives me great big hugs. She keeps me safe and warm. She takes me for a walk. She lets me play in the mud. She's big and strong. She comes when I call. I love my mommy because she is not afraid of the dark. She tucks me in. She rocks me to sleep. I love my mommy and my mommy loves me.
Good morning. Good morning and welcome to CVUUS, Champlain Valley Unitarian University, Universal Society on this fifth Sunday of the month, the penultimate day of August, late summer. Now, I need to remind you, as you might expect, to keep in mind that there are 3 more weeks of summer. We live in a beautiful place. It's a beautiful time of year, albeit in a troubled time. I'm Carl Lindholm. I'm the worship associate today. First, I want to thank Sonora and Jasper Gildrian for getting us off to a good start, reading a children's story together. Now, their mommy is Caitlin. Today is the last service of the summer series in spirituality and the arts. I remember when the worship team was back in May, when the worship team was considering what we might do for the summer in this series. I'm not sure who, but somebody suggested, let's do children's stories at some point. And I said, Ashley Wolfe is back in Vermont, lives in Vermont now. She grew up in the area in Middlebury. And Ashley, as many of you know, is one of America's foremost illustrators and authors of children's stories. So I said, wouldn't it be great if we could get Ashley Wolfe to come for that Sunday on children's stories? And Kate Gridley, who was there at the meeting, of course, said, I know her, I'll give her a call. Voila. Thank goodness for Kate Gridley's authority. And thank goodness we have Ashley Wolfe here with us today. Today's service is the art of children's stories, as I said. We also have another special guest today, Michelle Lowy. Will offer a reflection in just a few minutes on why I love stories. Now, Michelle has just retired after many years as an elementary school teacher. She taught every grade she put in elementary school in New York, New Jersey, and Bristol, Vermont. And that she did in addition to keeping Barnaby in line and raising 3 kids who are now adults. Next week, Barnaby is back leading services. It's the annual water communion service. So we're all to have a small sample of water, perhaps with us at the service, or if you'd like, you can put it in a communal container right outside the sanctuary door, which is, or just have it nearby next week when we have our annual water communion service. The worship team members will be happy to have Barnaby back leading our services next week. We have enjoyed our stint this summer, but we're ready for Barnaby to return to lead us in our services. Now, if you have a milestone and passage that you haven't submitted to Barnaby during the week, do just use the chat function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and I will remember to include that when we do milestones and passages later in the service. Now's the time for the call to worship. Call to worship today. I asked Marnie Wood if she would help me with the call to worship. Marnie, as she describes herself, has enjoyed a lifetime of being helpful. She especially loved observing young minds of her 3rd and 4th grade students for more than 30 years, constantly encouraging them to embrace curiosity and develop a love of learning. And Marnie gave me about 5 possibilities that might work from her experience doing all that. And the one I've chosen is a poem. It was a poem written by Grady Ann Ross, the granddaughter of Ann Ross. And Grady was a member of Marnie's 3rd grade class when she was 8 years old. And Grady Ann's poem is Imagination. It's our call to worship today. There's a friend in your mind that makes faces shine. It's called your imagination. You can be a fairy or an elf, or a favorite book on a shelf. It's called your imagination. With it, you can go anywhere, to Afghanistan or even Zaire. It's called your imagination. It will bring you to waterfalls or big castles with giant walls. It's called your imagination. So when you have nothing to do, have your friend talk to you. It will carry you to a place that puts a smile on your face. It's called your imagination. So thank you, Grady Ann, some time ago. Thank you, Marnie, for providing us with that. Now, for the chalice lighting, after Barnaby lights our chalices, please read with me the words on your screen. Flame of our faith, call us into the community of love and justice this morning and every morning. Now, for our time of all ages, I asked Connor Timmons if he would read a story for us with his boy Declan, his child Declan.
Today we're going to read This Is Not a Picture Book by Sergio Ruzziere. Alright, not a picture book. A book. There are only words in this book. Where are the pictures? This is not a picture book. Stupid book. See, the duck kicks the book. I'm sorry, book. And then along comes a little bug and he says, "What is that?" It's a book with no pictures. Wacky. Can you read it? I'm not sure, says the duck. Words are so difficult.
Look, he's still reading it.
He's still reading it. Wait, I know some of these words. Some are funny.
I think he's like seeing that stuff.
He's like thinking about the words and the connecting dots with him. Oh, some are very sad.
Okay.
Oh, that's pretty sad. There are wild words and peaceful words. All these words carry you away. And then they bring you home, where they stay with you forever. There you go. It says, read it again. You like that book?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi.
Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to seek what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. And may we walk in peace. Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to seek what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another. And may we walk in peace.
So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about stories and books, and I'm going to show you a couple of my favorites. I'm not sure that it's going to work out exactly so that you can see the best part of the illustrations, but bear with me. I love stories and books. When my children were little and I spent all day taking care of them, cooking, cleaning, doing laundry, driving, changing diapers, and all the other chores that had to be done, one of my friends asked me how I had time to read. And I answered that I had to read. Otherwise, I would spend all the time in my own life. We read to escape our own lives. We read to see our lives reflected in books. We read to learn about other people's lives, long ago and far away, in times and places we can never go to in real life. My first favorite book was Umbrella by Taro Yashima, a Japanese-American author and illustrator. I borrowed it so many times from the bookmobile in Fair Lawn, New Jersey, that the librarian finally told my mother that anyone who loved a book so much deserved to have their own copy. Here is my copy. Inscribed in January 1961, when I was 5, from Mommy. The little girl in the book gets boots and an umbrella for her 3rd birthday and can't wait for rain so she can use them. Finally, it rains and she can use her gifts. And the book ends with the sentence, "It was not only the first day in her life that she used her umbrella, it was also the first day in her life that she walked alone without holding either her mother's or her father's hand." I don't know if the book was meaningful to me because of its message about independence and growing up. Maybe. But earlier in the book, Momo, the little girl, imagines the sound the rain makes on her umbrella as a little tune. Here's Momo. Here's the little tune that she imagines. Every time I read the book to my children, I tried to match my reading of the tune to my mother's voice in my head, pronouncing the words exactly the way she did. Pompolo, 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 bolo bolo pompolo, bolo bolo pompolo, boto boto pompolo, boto boto pompolo. The book brings me back to my 5-year-old self, sitting by my mother as she reads to me. The book brings my mother and my childhood back to me. When I taught elementary school, my favorite part of the day was read aloud. Maybe I became a teacher so I could read the books I loved aloud to new children every year. I always read the same book on one of the first days of the year. The children I taught in New York, New Jersey, and in Bristol, Vermont, even those for whom reading and writing was hard, took it for granted that everyone would learn to do those things. So I read them The Day of Ahmed's Secret by Florence Parry Hyde and Judith Hyde Gilliland, illustrated by Ted Lewin. The story takes place in Cairo, Egypt, and is about Ahmed, who I guess is about 10 years old. He works all day driving a donkey cart around the city, delivering heavy canisters of butane gas to people who use it as cooking fuel. With Ahmed, we see the sights of Cairo and meet other vendors. The rich illustrations help the children see how different Ahmed's world is from theirs, just as much as the words do. Here is Ahmed in his cart. But he is eager to share a secret with the rest of his family. Finally, at sundown, he reaches his home. He says, "It is time to tell my secret." I take a deep breath. "Look," I say, "look. I can write my name." I write my name over and over as they watch, and I think of my name lasting longer than the sound of it, maybe even lasting like the old buildings in the city, 1,000 years. Stories, even more than most of our names, can last 1,000 years.
Thank you very much, Michelle, for that reflection. Now's a time in our service for the offering. In months that we have 5 Sundays, we share our offering on the last Sunday with a donee whose immediate needs come to our attention after the donation teams choose that month's regular donee. Thus, we are shifting our attention this morning from the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, to which you have generously given throughout August, to the temporary Food for Families program CVUUS set up 2 weeks ago with the Bread Loaf Zen community for families. It allows volunteers coordinated by Bread Loaf to close a meals gap between the end of summer food distribution programs to needy families and regular food distribution through Addison County Public Schools. The gap opened when the schools delayed their openings this year to September 8th because of the pandemic. In the first week of this rapidly organized program, Bread Loaf was able to provide food to 165 children and 109 adults in 65 families. When you donate on our website, as directed in the following slides, you will be able to designate which portion of your gift should go to Food for Families. Starting this week, you will also have the option of covering our payment processing costs. As usual, if you are writing a check, please make it out to CVUUS and write the name of the donee, Food for Families, in the memo line. Thank you for your generosity in supporting this vital interfaith outreach work.
Good morning. My name is Ashley Wolfe. Thank you, Carl Lindholm and Kate Gridley, for inviting me to speak to you today. I'm not a member of the church, but I certainly approve of everything the church does. And if I went to church, I would certainly go to the UU. I am an artist, and I know your theme this month is art and the spirit. And so I'd like to talk about how art has been an essential part of my life since I was a little child. I grew up in Middlebury, and I thought I'd show you some pictures from way back when that some of you might recognize some of these places. So this is a photo of the building of my family home on Locust Lane, which is on Chipman Hill. This picture would have been taken in 1958. And I'm ashamed that I can't remember the name of our contractor, but that is him grinning in the upper left-hand corner. And I lived there until I left home in 1980, and moved to California. This is the house, what the house looked like after it got built, just pretty much that same year. Well, I'm probably 4 in this picture. That's my little sister, Parry. She's probably 2. And that's one of our first dogs, Lumpy, which means friend in German. One of the themes of my life has been love of dogs. This is our dog, Hush Puppy. And I think that my life has been centered around dogs from my earliest memories. In 1984, which is going to be an interesting year for later in my talk, this was my dog. Her name was Pumpkin, and she went on to become a rather important dog in lots of my art, although she does not appear in the book that I'm going to share with you later. She did star in probably hundreds, if not 1,000, of these things that I called pumpkin cards, where she became my alter ego and did all the things that I would have done, but in a much funnier way. This one I painted after I went back to San Francisco after a summer in Vermont. I was pregnant with my second child, and I'm missing the green mountains and clean fields. This one's kind of funny because it's an animal depiction of a concert at Shelburne Farms, the Mozart Festival, back when they used to do it on the lawn there. And this one is of my dog Pumpkin and my mother's 2 border collies skating on the pond behind her house in Cornwall. So all the things that I did, Pumpkin did, only more gracefully and funnier. Now my dog's name is Rufus, and I get to skate on this lake, and it's a completely different experience. So I'm going to stop sharing now, and that gives you a little taste of my life as an artist. So I grew up in Middlebury. I went to Mary Hogan. I went to Middlebury Union High School. I graduated and went to Rhode Island School of Design. Came back, worked here for the Valley Voice for a while, and then met a boy, got married, and moved to San Francisco when I was only 24. And I loved it out there. I lived there for 34 years, but times change, things alter. And in 2014, I found myself needing to move back to Vermont. The main reason was my mom was getting dementia and was also physically ill. So she needed a daughter to take care of her. My marriage was falling apart. I was really sick of living in San Francisco, and both of my sons had left home. So what are you going to do? Go back to Vermont. That was 2014, and that Christmas I went to a production of Night Fires, which is a show that the Town Hall Theater has every solstice season. And one of the actors read a poem called The Way It Is by William Stafford. And wow, that really hit me. I realized when I was listening live that this was important to my life. So I went home, Googled it, wrote it down, and it's been resonant for me ever since for the last 5 years. And it's a little bit dark, but it's a kind of a dark, rainy morning today, and I think it's okay to read it. The Way It Is by William Stafford. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you're pursuing, but it's hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen. People get hurt or die. You suffer and get old. Nothing you can do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. And that really hit me. I thought, what is my thread? I must have one. And I realized that along with just needing to express myself visually, I needed to tell stories. And I've told stories ever since I was ripping off Dick and Jane and making my own little books about them, you know, when I was 6 years old, and all through elementary school and high school and college. And then I chose my chosen profession has been to write and illustrate children's books. And I like them because, of course, they're the ones with all the pictures. And I wouldn't be happy if I couldn't draw a lot of pictures to go along with the words. So after I moved to California, of course, my imagination stayed back here in Vermont, because I think your memories of your childhood are what certainly makes your first books come alive. Most people's first books are kind of autobiographical, and so was mine. It was called A Year of Birds, and it was all about this little girl growing up in Vermont and the birds she sees through the months of the year. And I changed a few things around because I loved growing up on Chipman Hill, but really I wanted to ride a school bus to school. So I made my little girl Ellie grow up in a farmhouse way out on a dirt road so that she could ride a school bus. And I always wished that I had my own pond. So Ellie has a pond that she can swim in the summer and skate on in the winter. And I wanted a little brother. I ended up with a sister, of course. But in the book, Ellie gets a little brother. So that's a quick overview of my life as an artist. And the second half of my talk, I'd like to be about a particular book that was first written in 1985, or 84 probably, published in 85, and is set right here in Middlebury. And I'm going to pause for a minute and get set to show you and read you two different versions of the same book, published 35 years apart and set right out on Munger Street. Only the Cat Saw by Ashley Wolfe. I don't always write all the books that I illustrate. I've illustrated lots and lots of books for other people. But when I was first starting out, my first few books, I wrote and illustrated. So this one begins, it was supper time and night was coming soon. Mother was busy with Sam. Amy was helping father. So only the cat saw a nice herd of Holsteins. It goes on through the night. So it's a book that I would call a concept book about time. It goes from dusk to dawn, and it's about a family, nuclear family of 4, and all the things that the child and the parents do inside the house, and all the things that the cat sees outside of the house. And it's got a lovely all-white family. It has a few pictures in it that were considered rather risque at the time. Amy gets up and uses the bathroom in the middle of the night. Mom nurses the baby. Just remember, this was 1985, so it was a little bit radical. But Dad makes breakfast and is a very important part of the family. I was a feminist then. I'm even more of a feminist now. And so when I got the opportunity to redo this book, it was really a great time to rethink what this book is really about. It did well, but it went out of print, and then I had a few copies stashed away. And I ended up later in my life with a very young editor who was having her own babies. So I sent her a copy of Only the Cat Saw for her first baby, Anna. And Anna loved it. She loved it. Time passed. She had another baby, and he loved it too. So she finally came to me and said, do you think we could republish this book? And it had gone out of print, and I had retained the copyright. So I said, sure. She said, you know, it's a little bit dated. The people, especially. Like Mom here. She's got her t-shirt tucked into her high-waisted mom jeans. And there are other places where it just looks like you could update it a little bit. And while you're at it, how about making your family multicultural? Because, you know, the world is changing, and even Vermont's changing. And I said, great, great, great. I'm happy to do it all, but I'm not just going to repaint the people. I'm going to repaint the whole book, because there's a few things that, you know, I wasn't crazy about from the first book either. So I want to read you my new book, just like the old book, but different, called Only the Cat Saw. I'm going to take this off because it gets in my way. The original book The original book was set out at a farm, which is called Clippership Farm on Munger Street in Middlebury. When I was a child, it was owned by the Park family. Then later, it was owned by the Taylor family. And now it's owned by the Malcolm family. And in each case, there's a great big farmhouse, and there were little kids living in it. And when I did this book, the Taylors had two daughters, they still do, Willow and Holly, and they were maybe 7 and 5. And I used both of them as my model, and I particularly used their cat, Nutkin, as my model. So Nutkin is really the star of the book. But Nutkin got old and died, and Holly and Willow grew up, and I needed new models. So I found a new cat. His name is Milo. He lives in South Royalton. And I redid the book. I did take a lot of pictures of the beautiful Malcolm children, but because they are also white, I couldn't use them in the book. So I ended up sort of taking bits and pieces from different families I know and making them the main characters in the book. So Only the Cat Saw redo 35 years later. I dedicate it to the super sisters, Ella and Tessa, who are 2 girls I know in San Francisco. And you'll see that many things are the same and a few things are different. It was supper time, and night was coming soon. Mother was busy with Sam. Tessa was helping Father. So only the cat saw. Instead of Holsteins, a nice herd of sheep. At bath time, Father was singing to Sam. Mother was tickling Tessa. So only the cat saw. I miss those living in California. At bedtime, Mother and Father were reading. Sam was finally asleep, and Tessa was supposed to be. So only the cat saw a rather terrifying sight. Luckily, the owl's not after him. At midnight, Tessa was dreaming. Mother, Father, and Sam were sleeping. So only the cat saw at 2 o'clock in the morning. Tessa got up very quietly. No one else did. So only the cat saw a few hours later, Sam woke Mother. Tessa and Father slept on. So only the cat saw it was breakfast time and day had begun. Mother was cracking eggs. Father was feeding Sam. So only Tessa saw the end. Thank you for letting me join you today. It was really fun to talk about this, to have a chance to think about the important role that Vermont has played in my life, how it's appeared in my art, and how it's still shaping everything I do. It's a very special place. I'm so grateful I live here now. And thank you again, Carl and Kate. Goodbye.
Thank you so much, Ashley. That was just lovely. It was wonderful. And you may come visit us at CVUUS whenever you want, whenever you feel like it. We would love to see you here. Now, let's have our closing words, our benediction, if you will. Many of you know Ted Shy. Ted Shy is the poetry guy. And it's Ted describes himself, he's a 9-year-old stuck in a grown-up's body. He writes poems for himself and other children and spends professional time helping kids find their voices in poetry by visiting schools in person and virtually around the country. Ted and his wife, Robin, have been members of CVUUS for 25 years. And I asked Ted if he would give me something of his that would work as closing words, as a benediction. And he sent a number of his poems to me, and I chose this one called Matters. I know a lot of matters that matter most to me. And when I tell you what they are, I bet that you will agree. It matters that I'm honest. It matters that I'm fair. And when I see a friend who's sad, it matters that I care. It matters on the playground that everybody plays. It matters that I look at things from many different ways. It matters that I'm careful with food I put inside me. It matters that I fight for rights that others have denied me. It's critical I speak my mind when I do not agree. And when it comes to being nice, I must be nice to me. It matters that I brush my teeth and sometimes take a bath. And while it's not my favorite thing, I'll try my best in math. But there's one thing that stands alone and matters coast to coast. I'm absolutely positive that kindness matters most. Thank you, Ted. Thank you to Ashley and everybody who helped make this service work today. Thank you to Michelle for her reflection. Thank you to Kate Gridley for all she does and the way she put together the music for today. Thank you to Margie, behind the scenes, making this all work. Thank you to Rich Wolfson for his work during the week, gathering these videos and other elements. Thank you to Jordan, who now will conduct our social hour, help you with our social hour, our Zoom social hour. So do stay on Zoom for our coffee hour, our virtual coffee hour together. Thank you all. Have a great week.